In today's video, I want to explain how you can motivate yourself whenever you want. Now, if you clicked on this video, I'm willing to bet that you fall into one of two categories. The first category being you're frustrated with where you're at in life right now. You want to be going to the gym. You want to be more disciplined, more productive. You know there are tasks that you need to get done, but you just don't feel like it. And you're spending all these hours on social media, watching TV, what have you, but you want to flip the script. You want to be able to, at a moment's notice, change things up and really dive in and get to work and be productive. So that's the first group. The second group is you're probably a go-getter, right? You're a high performer, and you want to just find that extra edge, that extra tool to add to your tool belt, so to speak, so that you have a further competitive advantage. And so in any case, whatever category you fall into, what I'm going to walk you through today is a 3-step process. I have my notes here for how to achieve this. And I'm going to first explain the process. And then at the end, I'm going to walk you through a practical exercise of how to actually do this in practice. You want to motivate yourself whenever you want. Okay, how do you actually do that, like from that moment? But first, let's explain the 3 steps. I want to give you context because as opposed to what we might call motivational junk food, where you watch a classic motivational video, something rah-rah to get you hyped up. This is more so going to be concerned with the substance of changing your brain chemistry and the physiology behind actually being motivated, and looking for a more substantive, lasting change. So yeah, you can motivate yourself whenever you want, but hopefully you don't have to initiate this process very often because, once you get that fire burning, it's going to stick with you for quite some time. All right. Now, jumping into this process, many of the concepts come from this book, excellent book that I would recommend, Why Motivating People Doesn't Work and What Does. As you can see, I took a lot of notes here. Really good book. Major shout out to the author, Miss Susan Fowler. And so many of the concepts and ideas and research behind these 3 steps I'm going to share with you come from the book. So definitely would encourage you to dive in further and give that a read. All right. So without further ado, let's dive in with step 1. Step 1 is to reset your pleasure-pain balance. What does that mean? In the book, the balance between pleasure and pain is described in an analogy using a teeter-totter at a playground, one end being pleasure, the other end being pain. Now, I mentioned in a recent video, my recent video a few weeks back, on how to reset your life in a week. And I was basically explaining that when we are over-consuming hyper-palatable processed foods, really sugary foods, we're on our devices constantly, on social media, TVs, etc. Essentially, what it does in our brains is it numbs us in many respects, and it lowers our ability to feel pleasure. We need more stimuli to feel the same excitement and pleasure that we once did. But then on the flip side, it makes us be in a position where we're less able to handle resistance and challenge that often comes when we're pursuing our goals and we're pursuing work that really matters. You want to write that essay, you want to go to the gym, but you're on the couch. Maybe you don't feel like getting up. Well, if you're constantly stimulating your brain with all these activities and these devices and these platforms, then you're not as able to just go ahead and just get over that resistance and just take action. So this is the first step that we're taking, which is to reset our pleasure-pain balance so that we're more well-equipped to take action and respond and jump in and get things done. So what does this look like in practice? Well, simply put, it comes from abstaining from the pleasurable stimuli for a set period of time. We're going to get into this in the practical exercise at the end. You're going to determine how long you're going to step away from, whatever it is that is holding you back. But typically it's from a week long to a month long or longer, depending on your preference and what you decide to do. But essentially you're abstaining, you're stepping away from, the social media, the really sugary foods, all these things that just kind of get you wired up. And then everything else, like writing an essay, starting on a big project, going to the gym, eating clean, it all seems very, like, I don't want to do that, basically. Like, it's not pleasurable. It's not exciting. It's not something you want to do. You're not motivated to do it. So the first step is abstaining, and that's going to reset our pleasure-pain balance. And you're going to get back to a point where there's some sort of void that you then have to fill between I had this stimulating, experience from these devices or being on these platforms. I step away from them. I endure the initial discomfort that comes with that, but eventually there's going to be a tipping point where now I'm motivated to take action to get that sense of reward back. But now I'm getting it from something that's actually productive for me. So that's essentially the process for step one, reset your pleasure-pain balance. Step two is to establish your current motive. We want to be motivated. We need an underlying motive, which is simply the reason for doing something. And so in my experience, touching on this, being a trainer in this health and wellness space for nearly a decade at this point, what I consistently see, and I think it leads to failure, it leads to inconsistency for so many people, is that we set very lousy, shallow goals in terms of the reasons for our goals, so the underlying motivation, so to speak. To give you an example, let's talk about exercise. It's the most simple example. What is more motivating? To say that I exercise every day because I want to set a positive example for my family, for my wife, or ladies, you want to set an example for your husband, motivate him, encourage him. Is that more motivating? Or is it like, yeah, when I go to Mexico, yeah, I'm gonna be on the beach. Like I'm gonna look great. I'll have that six pack. People are gonna be looking at me. Like, what do you think is more sustainable? What do you think is, if there are two fires, which do you think is going to continue burning much longer and is in all likelihood going to have an unlimited supply of motivation for you? And so with this point, in establishing our current motive, we're establishing our current goal, our current focus point, but then attaching something that is truly meaningful as the reason behind it. And so what I would encourage you to do here is explore the following. So in the book, it talks about the three things that we all want as human beings. And so I'm going to outline these for you, and it's going to give you a blueprint for how you can discover the things that are most important to you and meaningful to you. So the three things we all want. The first is choice, a sense of choice, a feeling that I'm in control of my own destiny. I'm the one deciding my own behaviors and the outcomes that I'm getting. And so an example of this would be, maybe you don't control your work hours, right, at your job, but you do control how you spend your time outside of your work hours. Are you choosing to exercise? Are you choosing to read? Are you spending quality time without your phone, spending quality time with the people you love? So choice being the first one. The second one being connection, a feeling of community, a feeling of shared values, a feeling of being understood, and collaborating towards progress as well is another point that I mentioned. And that's an essential piece to happiness, is feeling like you have a brother in arms, you have a community, you have like-minded individuals that you can collaborate with, rub shoulders with, and collectively you're all progressing. You're advancing in a certain particular area of life or many areas of life. That's the second thing, connection. The third thing is competence, a feeling that you have mastery, you feel capable in a certain area, and you're able to flex those muscles, so to speak. You have understanding and confidence in a particular arena, and you're able to lean in with that and either teach others or just kind of dive in head first with that endeavor or that activity. And so what I would encourage here is to focus on building competence in things that really matter, things that really pay off. So for example, back in high school, I played an embarrassing amount of video games, just countless hours. Now, is that really productive? I could get better. I could continue getting better. Maybe I can beat my friends in Madden or 2K, but like, what does it amount to? It doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't really do anything. And so comparing that time spent versus getting better with exercise and keeping my form sharp and my understanding of how things work and how to really pour on the intensity, when to pull back, when to focus on mobility, when to focus on cardio, nailing my nutrition, all these sort of things. So I'm building competence in that area that can benefit my health and my life, but then I can share that with my friends and my loved ones to pour into them as well and improve their life. So thinking about those 3 C's, choice, connection, and competence, think about that as you're establishing your current motive, your current focus area in life, your current goal. What's the underlying reason, and are you checking boxes for those 3 C's of choice, connection, and competence? Now, moving forward to step 3. Step 3 simply is to take action. Now, a couple notes on this. When you're not feeling motivated, it's very difficult to build up some steam, so I want to acknowledge that, having experienced it on my own many times, but just considering that through this process. You're watching this video and maybe you're not motivated. You're sitting, watching, looking up at your phone, or you're on the computer, TV, whatever you're watching this from, and you're just like, I don't feel like it. All right? How do you start taking action from that frame of mind and being in that position? So the first thing that I like to do here is to make a list. Now, maybe you're not taking action, you feel overwhelmed. Maybe that's why. You just feel like, maybe you're unconfident about your ability to perform in a certain area, or it feels like you have 100 things to do, you don't really know where to start. So what I like to do is I start by making a list. I'll pull out a sheet of paper, make a list of what I need to do. And in terms of getting started with taking action, personally, I like to bias my environment and making sure my environment is in order first. And I use that as a catalyst to start taking other more important actions. So what I mean is, like, if your bed is not made, if your house, your apartment, your dorm room is a disaster, it's very difficult to be productive for the long haul in that environment. And whether you realize it or not, it's taking up some brain space. Like, it's just that clutter. You're in a mess. And so your brain feels like it's in a mess. So I usually try to start with that first, is cleaning up the environment, tidying up the environment, getting that situated, getting that organized. And that process, I don't know about you, but for me, I enjoy it. I enjoy that process of decluttering, not necessarily just cleaning up, like a maid service, but it just feels like a breath of fresh air from my mind, so to speak. So I start with that, and then I will continue along on my list. And I'm starting to just check things off, and I'm gamifying it in the sense of, like, I want to push myself, like, hey, I got these 2 tasks. Can I get these done in the next 30 minutes? Okay, cool. Boom. And then I jump in with that. And I really start to lean in that regard, and it just kind of carries forward and cascades in a snowball effect, so to speak. So that's the first thing, is make a list with a bias towards your environment, cleaning up your immediate surroundings as best you can, and then continuing along with your checklist. The second thing that I have for you here is to break resistance tasks into smaller tasks. So what I mean by this is like classic 2-minute rule. So let's say you want to go to the gym. That feels like a big task. Okay, cool. Well, just go to your closet and pull out your go to your drawer and pull out your exercise clothes. Okay, cool. That's first step. And then next thing, all right, pull out socks, shoes, sneakers, whatever. All right, next step. And then your whole goal is to just drive to the gym or walk to the gym. Okay, cool. That's step 3. And so you're chunking this down into just these small incremental tasks that are very easy to overcome. But then when you stack them up all together, they amount to the greater action or the project or the task that you want completed. So whenever you feel some resistance, think to yourself, how can I break this into a smaller initial task? What's the first immediate step I can take and start going through that process? And then the final thing that I would recommend that I'm personally trying to do better at is to focus on incremental progress. So for example, back to the point of environment, one of the things I didn't even realize was adding stress was my environment, my closet in particular, getting clothes as gifts and these different things, little knickknacks and all these little things that were just in my closet. They were just adding space and clutter. Some things I wanted to keep, some things I wanted to donate, get rid of, but nonetheless, it was adding all this clutter. Historically, I would have been like, let me wait till I have a weekend. I'm going to do it in like 6 hours. I'll do everything. I don't quite think that's the right approach. If you have the opportunity immediately, go ahead, but don't put it off and delay, postpone it for the sake of trying to do it all at once. But instead, whatever the task is, whether it's an essay, it's going to the gym, it's getting your nutrition in order, whatever it is, find opportunities to make incremental progress. So I can chop the broader task, the broader project down into bite-sized pieces and start taking requisite actions now versus putting it off until later, trying to do it in a greater way later. So that's my final point there. Now, let's get into briefly the couple key points on how to get better at this process, and then we'll get into actually what the process looks like. So in the book, there is an acronym MVPs that is highlighted as the key skills to develop in order to self-regulate, in order to get better at being attuned to your motivation and how to turn the dial, so to speak. When you notice it's low, how do you turn it up and reinvigorate yourself so that, again, as the video suggests, you can do this whenever you want. So MVPs, that acronym, the M stands for mindfulness, the V stands for values, and the P stands for purpose. So through this process, what you want to do is every single time that you're going through this process, you want to motivate yourself, that sort of thing. The first thing you want to focus on is increasing mindfulness. The second thing is understand your values. And then the third thing is determine your purpose. And so let's start with increasing mindfulness. This essentially is the process of being aware of your current state and understanding how to catch things early. Understand and observe when your motivation is starting to slide. Why is that? I'm feeling some stress, some anxiety, some worry. Why is that? To get to the source of it, nip it in the bud, and then turn the tide versus you get all the way down into this rut and this slump. And now you got to really just like get the wheels turning again. It feels like this big effort. But to be able to catch it in that moment, that's mindfulness, being present. And so that's the first piece. The second piece is to understand your values. Now, as the book describes it, values are premeditated cognitive standards of what a person considers good, bad, worse, better, or best. Values are enduring beliefs people have chosen to accept as guidelines for how they work and live their lives. Now, I believe that much of our personal success and satisfaction comes from when we align our values with our actions. We're keeping our word to ourselves. We're investing time and taking actions in areas that are truly meaningful to us. So back to the earlier point that I mentioned of many people having lousy reasons for doing things that just aren't really that motivating. I think this happens because we don't take the time out to actually write down what are our values, what's motivating us, who are we doing this for, what cause are we pushing to support. We haven't outlined those things. Surely didn't write this down in grade school or in high school or in college. And so if you don't do that, then what are you left to? You're basically left to have your values be, you're basically taking on the values of what you've been told to value. You've been told to value materials and the opinions of others, especially other strangers, that they're supposed to think something of you, or like they're supposed to see you in some light, and you have to care about that deeply, and that's going to determine your actions. But instead, what I'm encouraging you to do here is understand your unique values, what's important to you. And when you do that, it's going to inform your reasons, your motivations, and it's going to be a lasting source of motivation for you. All right, so that's the second point there. And then lastly is determine your purpose. So your purpose is your motive. It's the deep and meaningful reason for doing something. And essentially, what I like to think about here is, who am I fighting for? When I take a particular action, when I pursue something, how can it benefit my loved ones? How is it going to have perhaps a carryover effect and improve a particular situation or somebody else's life? Or maybe I'm failing to take action in a certain area, and it's leading to like someone else having to endure stress that they otherwise wouldn't have to. And so that's essentially determining the purpose. And the more attuned with this MVP that you can get The better you get at recognizing these things and being very clear on them, the better you're going to be able to quickly, on command, whenever you want, motivate yourself. So let's wrap this up by going through the practical exercise. All right, I want to motivate myself right now. How do I do that, Devin? So step one is to choose how long you're going to abstain from the pleasurable stimuli. So beginning with the sacrifice. Hey, I want to make this change. I want to get back to being motivated. All right, I need to step away from my phone. I need to step away from social media. I need to hold off on the desserts and the sugars. How long are you going to do that? Determine that step one and begin. The timer starts now, essentially. Step two is to write down your current motive. So again, this can be what your particular goal is that you have in mind. What's your current motive, the reason behind what you're doing or the reason behind the goal. And then step three is to add, this is another thing that I do, but add a weekly recurring event to your calendar for reflection. And so this is where the MVP kicks in, where every single week I set my motive, my direction, my goal, I take action, but then every week I reflect back on the past week. How did it go? How was my productivity? Did I achieve my goal? How aligned was I? How mindful was I? Was I aligned with my values, my purpose? Do I notice my motivation starting to slide? If so, I have the weekly reflection to reflect back, look back, and then dive in and get realigned to make sure everything is in its proper order and everything is properly motivating. I'm not riding on motivational junk food that doesn't last. So that's basically it. That's the process, the step 1, 2, 3 process for motivating yourself whenever you want. And so again, I don't know what you're thinking as you're watching this. Like you might be thinking that, like it doesn't seem like I'm not watching a David Goggins video or something that's just going to get me revved up in that moment. There's definitely a place for that. You know, I salute Mr. Goggins and all those videos. I definitely think there's a place for them. There's a use for them. But with this process, it's been very beneficial for me to go through it and understand that I can do this whenever I want now. And I'm confident that now you have the tools to do so as well. So I would encourage you to engage in this process, give it a go, start diving in with it, start putting it into play, and I will see you in the next video. But until then, stay blessed by the best. Take care.